Welcome back, addicts, to another show review. I'm Josh.
I'm Cole.
And today we're going to do a interview type style review on the Scream TV show on MTV. Because Colton has seen both seasons on Netflix, so he is ready for if they ever release more. And I'm going to ask him some questions, but first I'm going to let him talk about the plot of the show.
Okay, so the plot essentially follows... Well, it starts off as 8 teens, but then they quickly cut it down to 6. And those 6 are Emma Duval, Aubrey Jensen, Noah Foster, Brooke Maddox, and yes, I have to look at my phone for this because I don't remember names well. Kieran Wilcox, Jake Fitzgerald, and... if I can find the other guy, Will Belmont.
Ooh,
and there is one other character in it, and it's Bella Thorne's character, but she dies in the first episode. And I was like, if she's going to be in this for the entire episode, act like the complete jerk she is.
You know, I hate it when shows get quote unquote big name actors or actresses, and they use that to promote their show, and then they get rid of them in the first 15 minutes or so. Which, I don't know if they ever advertised it like that, but kind of interesting.
But, I mean, personally, I was fine with it just because I was like, Bella Thorne in the very first episode was just kind of a jerk, if that makes sense. You know, she went, like, complete and just utter... I can't say that word.
Alright, well, we'll get into our questions then. I guess one of the most important things about, like, anything horror-related is, like, the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So did you think, like, you know, since it is based off of, like, a movie line... Does it have kind of the same atmosphere? Is it, you know, straight up scary? Is it more suspense? What is it like?
I would say it really depends on how you like to view it. I would say there's probably like moments of suspense and there's moments of just horror and being scary, but a lot of it kind of feels like them going through their normal teenage life, if that makes sense. Mm. Because you see them a lot in school, and you see them a lot, you know, doing stuff together. They're going to parties, they're planning parties, they're doing this and that. And they get the occasional call from the killer being like, I have your friend, and if you don't come get your friend, then I'm going to kill him. And they'll be like, okay, well, I'll just call the cops. And then they'd get a text that said, if you call the cops, I'll kill them anyway. And that was a whole story thing that you could never call the cops in the whole thing. Like, if they ever got involved, someone ended up dead.
I mean, wouldn't that happen anyway? And like, because he is a killer. I guess because one of the most recent like horror shows that I've watched was American Horror Story, which I thought did fantastic in its first season. Mm-hmm. Do you think that? Compared to it, does it balance like the main plots really well? Because like in the first season of American Horror Story, in case you guys haven't watched it, it is very much suspenseful, but they keep that as the main focus throughout. There's very few side things that they go off of. Do you think it does really good balancing like that, or is it a little bit?
Well, I mean, the kind of issue that I had with it was that it had a side story that didn't really make too much sense until basically towards the end of the first season. Because you don't really know why these two guys, and it was Jake and Will, had this huge secret, and there was somehow blackmail involved, and yeah, and it like didn't make sense until the end of it, and I'm like, so you threw this storyline in here just because.
So I guess one of the things that you mentioned right there was some of the characters, and that's, I think, a big part of it. I mean, you know, horror isn't really known for too many likable characters. There's normally typically like one or two maybe out of a horror movie, maybe even none at all. But since it is a show and the characters really do carry the plot and like just, you know, views in general, what did you think of the characters?
Okay, so here's my thought. Every character that wasn't Emma's mom, Maggie, also known as Daisy, was really one-dimensional. Everyone but the mom was just very one-dimensional. You had Emma Duval, who was the smart, I can do anything kind of girl, you know? Then you had the nerd, who was Noah. He was just a nerd who had really bad luck. I swear, like, every woman that he fell in love with dies. Then you have Brooke, who's the typical high school, I gonna party all the time and get drunk and You had Jake, who was the typical sports douchebag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you had Will, who was the farm kid who played basketball and was like gonna get a scholarship. And that was pretty much like their whole character thing, is that they were all just really one-dimensional. I mean, like, who was it? It was Audrey. Her whole thing was, oh, I'm bi-curious. And I'm like, okay, and?
So it sounds like it has some like typical horror tropes. Do you think they did it like? Is it one where they throw in a few surprises to where it throws you off? Like maybe at the beginning they seem like one trope and then they turn into another,
No.
or is it like?
I would say the only time that they really did that was in the second season when you figure out that Audrey was the reason the first killer even showed up to the town. But other than that, that's really it. I mean, sure, there's moments when you're like, in the second season, Noah finally has a girlfriend that's alive more than one episode, and then she ends up dying, and they think they've got to her in time, but they find her dead, drowned in the lake, and it's just like, really? And, I mean, like, there was these points where, like, it was a good twist, and I liked it, but it was just, these characters didn't have, and it's not even the actor's fault. I believe it was the director and the writing of these characters was just really bad and just really one-dimensional.
So does it have? I mean, since some of the characters sound a little like iffy in terms of their believability, do you think that their arcs and stuff like that played out well enough to where it made the plot flow good, or did it kind of hinder it a little bit?
I would say specifically with Emma in this show, her character arc really develops because the first season she basically kills the killer, and then she has to get over her PTSD in the second season, which she eventually does, which I thought it was a really good storyline. You had Noah having to get over the fact that his two girlfriends that he's ever had in the world dead. And I mean, really, other than those two, they were the only two that really kind of had, convincing storylines, because they kill Will towards the end of towards the end of the first season and that's kind of what gives Emma PTSD, is she accidentally kills him because the killer set up a trap that was going to kill him, and they replace him with some guy named Eli in the second season, and then they killed Jake at the beginning of the second season. And they replace him with some guy that's basically him but can draw and is much quieter. And whose name is Gustavo.
Ooh, fancy. So when you were talking about the kills, this is kind of something that I think a lot of horror fans, especially slasher horror fans, really get into about the kills and how creative they are and what the circumstances are. Do they feel rewarding enough to where all these setups are worth it at the end?
I would say some of them. The first one I felt was rewarding because I don't like Bella Thorne in this show. She was in it for 15, not even 15, 5 or 10 minutes. If that. And she was a complete just jerk the entire time. And she died, but the way she died was basically the guy that she was with got his head cut off and thrown at her. And then she sees it and the killer kills her. I'm like... And then there was some, who was it? It was Audrey's girlfriend in the first season. Randomly gets killed, and her body got staged. I'm like, I wasn't attached to that character. I've seen her once. Maybe. Other than that kill, I've seen her once. I would say Will's kill, when he died, felt kind of there's a reason for it. When Noah's girlfriends died, I didn't really feel like there was a reason for them to die. I mean, in the second season, his girlfriend literally dies because the killer calls him. He's like, oh, well, you shouldn't have been having sex, and because you had sex, I'm going to have to kill you.
That's actually another question I want to go over, but I'm going to save that for a little just one sidestep because I do want to talk about the production value of this because I think some of the things just from what you've said here and then what you were telling me like before we started recording this was some things are like hit and miss on like landing certain things, but I wanted to know about like the production value. Did this feel like high tier? Like
it felt really high tier. It was really well made. I just think, like I said again, I really think that if they had made the characters less one-dimensional and actually given them a personality, rather than just kind of falling into those typical high school horror movie tropes, you know what I mean? And the funny thing is that in the very first episode, they decided to go super meta by being like, they're sitting in their English class or something like that, and someone brings up like slasher films being made into TV shows, and he just goes, well, a slasher film can never be made into a TV show because, because basically everyone has to die really quickly in slasher films just so that the final girl can either get the kill or join forces with the killer. And I'm like, he's right. And then that's sort of what kind of made this whole thing fall apart. Like, you got attached to the characters, but you didn't get attached enough to the point where you cared if they died.
Well, I guess that's all right. Do you feel like that's all right in the sense of this? Because in a movie sense, it's fine, because, I mean, one, it's not very long, and then two, like, you mainly are there to see kids die. For a TV show, I guess what I want to know is if people watch this show and they don't find the characters interesting, is the kills like spread out enough, or like I guess the horror elements spread out enough to where like people could stress through this if they really wanted to see some cool horror kills, or is this kind of like it's too far spread apart?
I mean, it really depends. Like, the first season, it was kind of like kill, 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 kill. Like, I swear there was a death of someone in almost every episode.
That sounds nice.
And then the second one was basically, the second one was just kind of kill for no reason. Like, you might see one or two, maybe 3 deaths in every episode, and it's just like, what? And it just didn't make sense to me why you would do that anyway. And I don't know, it just kind of sucked, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like the first season did pretty good, but the second season they just didn't replenish characters enough to where they could carry that same level of performance over, and that why it felt...
Well, the issue that I first saw with the second season was when they were killing Jake. They made it really drawn out. I mean, like, really drawn out. He gets kidnapped in the first episode, and then you don't see him again until the second episode, and he has a bear trap on his foot, and he's trying to escape, but he doesn't make it out, because the killer catches him before he can escape. But then it's in the third episode that he finally dies, but it's not until 2 episodes later that they find where he was put, and he's dead. And he basically falls in front of his girlfriend. But his death just felt pointless. His death felt like the only reason they killed him was so that they could put Gustavo in as a character that was a main person.
That's interesting. Well, I only have pretty much only one more question because you kind of answered about the acting, which you thought it was fine, but it was mainly just the writing you felt. But going back to when you were saying that the whole thing felt a little meta, that it was trying to act too self-aware, is that something that you think they did in a, I don't want to say profound way, but at least a good way, where they're like, oh, they put it in there to like foreshadow? Or do you think it like they put it in there to be funny, like, we're not going to follow this, we're not going to make it like that, and then it landed on its face?
You see, I think that's what happened, was that second thing where they were like, we're going to be meta about this and be like, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to make everyone feel like they matter. We're going to keep people alive. We're going to make every kill feel important. But then every death just didn't feel that important, besides Will's death, and then Noah's girlfriend's first death, and then his second girlfriend's death, and then those are just certain deaths didn't feel like they were needed, if that makes any sense.
That's that kind of reminds me of, and not in a very good way, but it reminds me of X-Men Apocalypse, where they're coming out of the movie and they're like, yeah, the third movie's always the worst. And it's like, congratulations, you played yourself.
Yeah.
So that's a little disappointing to hear. But I mean, it sounds like it's got some mixed stuff. I guess we'll go on to Colton. Do you have any like favorite stuff that you just want to highlight? Real quick?
Before I go on to that, I do want to bring something up. My other issue with the show, right, is that I want, like, whenever there's a killer, I want it to feel important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's what happens. First killer, you feel is important. You feel like there's something major going on, and then you figure out, like, who the killer is and why they're trying to, like, get to this certain family, and that feels important. Second killer feels kind of important, but it also just feels like they're going after the person who brought the first killer to the place that they live, right? And here's what kind of pissed me off, was that Noah and Gustavo basically wrote a comic book all about the deaths and stuff like that, right?
And then all of them end up
Well, no.
Okay.
But it's
Thank
like
God they didn't
it's
do
kind of like them following the story of what happened to them, but then it kind of falls back to like their, I guess it's called their editor or whatever, or the guy that helps them put out the comic books. Kind of is like they don't want to hear about Kieran the victim; they want to hear about Kieran the murderer or whatever, right? And they're like, so now you're going to go figure out about this girl on this island who committed what was it, like 5 murders one night, and her name's Anna Hobbs. Well, that really doesn't even come into play because it's 2 episodes. You get 1 new killer. Okay, I take back. You technically get 2, but the second one is in 1 episode of it. He's like only at the very beginning of that. Because what Netflix did is they took the 13th and 14th episode of the show and put them together.
Made a movie.
Basically, made a feature-length movie. And they took that first killer, had him kill Kieran, who was now in prison, and the guard, and then that was it. And then they moved to this guy who basically started mimicking the Anna Hobbs murders, and then, and it was just dumb in my personal opinion.
One of the things I probably should have asked towards the beginning, and I forgot I even had this on there, so I'm glad you had us keep going, is there any connection at all to the movies, or is it just like, oh, it's set in the same universe?
The only connection that I can even really think of is, I can't remember which Scream movie it is. It's either like 3 or 4, where the Scream killer in that movie is going after this woman who gave him up for adoption and then, like, apparently forgot about him, so he's mad at her for forgetting. And that's all that really felt like, at least with the first killer. Because the first killer was someone that the mom of Emma gave up for adoption, and it was a closed adoption, which if you guys don't know what closed adoption is, that's basically, you don't get to know anything about the child.
Right.
And, that one kind of felt like that. It felt important. Second killer was just, oh, I'm going to screw with this girl because she brought the killer here. And the other thing that I kind of noticed with it was, the killers kind of got weaker and weaker, if that makes sense. First killer was this really strong, I can do anything I want, I can always win no matter what kind of killer. And killed a bunch of people. Then the second one only killed 12, which, that's a big number, I know, 12 people. But then the last one only kills 3, and he's in 2 episodes. And the killers just kind of felt contrived and not like they were that important. Only the first one felt important.
Yeah, because 3 kills is like, you reach the bare minimum to be called a serial killer.
Yep. So,
but that's interesting that they have more just Easter egg callbacks than actual hard connections to the movies. Which I'm wondering if that's a licensing thing. But I guess, real quick, do you have any favorite moments or actual likable parts?
I found the whole meta thing really funny because they failed miserably at trying to be funny with that. But also, my favorite part was Noah and Audrey were kind of sitting there together, and they're like, we're going to figure out these crimes and stuff like that. Because Noah's first girlfriend had just died, and he's like, I want to put my grief and anger towards something important, like vigilante crime fighting. So the girl just goes, yeah, we could be called, yeah, we should do that. We'll be Vicarious and the Virgin. And he just goes, the saddest crime fighting duo ever. And I just found that so funny, it just stuck with me.
Do Is their main goal to save like 30-year-olds in their mom's basement or
You
like
mean incels?
Sure.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess to close this up, because this video is getting a little bit longer, Colton, what would you rate this film? Or I guess show, I should say.
I would give it a 4.
A 4, so a solid, high tier, can't believe it's not better.
Yeah.
Interographic. Which, I know you said that it's kind of like one of those where it's not really good, at least from your personal opinion, but it's one that you liked enough where you're interested to check out the 3rd season. It's like...
I guess the best way to put it is that I did like it for the reasons I should like it. I liked it because I hated it so much.
Well, is that really how you should like? I mean, I think that's probably the opposite of what the people that made it like. I guess it's like, well, that's not really a bad thing. Like, people are like, yeah, I made this.
Like, I'll say the main reason I'm going to watch the 3rd season is, 1, it's a complete reboot, and 2, because I want to be able to make fun of it more. Which is really bad, but...
Well, I guess that's all we got. I guess it sounds like, if it's something that you want to, have a more cheesy, fun thing to just kind of laugh at more than be scared of, then this is for you. It sounds like it has way better production than Slender Man, so that's a plus. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like they got somewhat solid characters and actors in there with, a decent story, at least in the kills. So if you guys are interested in that, you guys go check it out. Colton will be reviewing the next one that comes out if it ever does. I don't know. I might check up the reboot. I might go for the gaffs and the goose. So
I might.
We'll see. But anyway, guys, that'll conclude this video. If you want to check out any of our other stuff, you can look at our YouTube channel. We got a bunch of shows, games, other kind of content like that coming and already on there. You can also follow us on social media or check out our podcast, Intervention Prevention, on SoundCloud. All of those links will be in the description. So anyway, guys, see you later, addicts.
Bye.